6 members of our panel, Jen Bunty with Consortium of Appalachian Fire Managers and Scientists, Jess McGuire with Quail Forever, Nicole Simmons with Central Appalachians Fire Learning Network, Kevin Hires with Tall Timbers Fire Science Consortium, Sean Swartz and Dakota Wagner with Forest Steward Guild, and Rebecca Wilson with Longleaf Pine Cooperators Group. And each member of the panel is going to present for about 10 to 15 minutes about their particular program they're working with. And then at the end, we'll have questions for the panel and for the speakers. So Jen, you are up first.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you for having me. Let me pull up my slides here. Okay, hopefully y'all are seeing this.
Yep, we got it.
Awesome, thank you. Well, I'm thrilled to be here virtually, and really happy to see the momentum behind this Prescribed Fire Council. So thanks to everyone who's put this together. As Jason mentioned, my name's Jen. I'm with the Consortium of Appalachian Fire Managers and Scientists. If you are not familiar with us, get ready because we're here to be your best friend. We, along with the other fire science exchanges in the Fire Science Exchange Network, we are here to support your work, however it's involved with fire, to get science in the hands of the people who need it and get questions into the hands of the researchers so that we can find answers to it. And as you can see here in Virginia, you are covered by both the Southern Fire Exchange, which I'm sure you'll hear about later, and then us here through the Appalachians. And what we do, it's right in our name, so we connect fire scientists and managers. We connect them with the public and the policymakers as well to a certain extent. And we try to get fire on the ground in the right places at the right time for the right reasons. And what defines the right is the science and the research behind it. Some of the other things that we have available or that we do, we support a student-led fire crew out of Clemson. Me and my supervisor, Helen Moore, were both based in the foothills of the Southern Blue Ridge Mountains here in South Carolina, and based out of Clemson. We have a series of interpretive trails throughout the region called the Fire Learning Trail. You've probably seen our hashtag #GoodFire, or if you've used that term in the past couple of years, that's where that came from. And it has taken on a life of its own, of course. We support workshops, events, field tours, webinars, trainings. I have a couple publications here on the left-hand side that I wanted to feature: this fire history synthesis, the fire oak literature synthesis, and the Fields photo guide that Adam Coates put out last year, 2 years ago. What is time anymore? It was recently. But these are some of the things that you can find on our website, appalachianfire.org. We have a full research collection. And we're actually getting a new website soon. It's hopefully going to premiere next month. That in some of the new features, we're going to include still having that research collection that's searchable by keyword. We're going to have some virtual tours, field tours available, and a research map. So you'll be able to pull up layers of fire history research sites in our region, or fire and small mammal studies in our region, or fire and herps studies in our region, and see what's applicable maybe to your area. Something else, we've been partnering with the other exchanges in the East and the Northern and Southern research stations from the U.S. Forest Service is the Fueling Collaboration Panel Discussion Series. I see a lot of familiar names, so probably a lot of you know about it already. But we do have one more in our season 2, and we are sort of gearing ourselves up to start talking about season 3. It's been a great series. We cover sort of the up and coming, the hot topics. You know, you can't avoid a fire pun, the hot topics in fire. And we get a panel of experts to discuss it in a really casual but informative way. What else did I miss? Oh, and we have the Southern Blue Ridge Treks, the Prescribed Fire Training Exchange that we partner with the Nature Conservancy on. That we're going to have another one coming in 2023, hopefully, all things considered. Some other things you might want to put on your calendars. March 17th is that last Fueling Collaboration panel discussion. I'll be moderating it, and the theme is Thinking Beyond Fuel Reduction. As a comms person, I hear all the time, I go into a prescribed fire and I say, all right, why are we burning? What can I tell people? And I get the same sort of answers, fuels mitigation, improving wildlife habitat. It's like this very rote response. And so we're going to be talking about some of the other sort of exciting reasons that we burn, like blueberries, soils, and getting rid of invasive worms and supporting native worm habitat. And we'll also have Ben Jones from Rough Grouse Society talking about grouse and West Nile virus. And it's going to be a pretty interesting discussion. And I'm sure some of our other collaborators on this panel are going to talk about the upcoming FLN workshop at the end of May. It is a collaboration between the Southern Blue Ridge and the Central Appalachians, FLNs, in Dillard, Georgia. And we're going to be highlighting research coming out of the 2016 wildfire. So, that 5-6 year mark is usually when research starts coming out. And so we're going to hopefully have a lot of speakers to give us some good information on that. November 14th through 18th in Asheville, we are partnering to support the National Cohesive Strategy Workshop. And then in December, early December, we're going to be having another Fire in Eastern Oaks conference. It's going to be virtual, and we'll have some information coming out about that soon. And then, oh, sorry, that's so blurry. There it goes. I just want to put up our contact information here. My contact information is there. We have a Facebook page, Twitter. We have a YouTube channel where we post recordings and some of these virtual tours. Our website, of course, is there if you need access to the research collection. That website will stay the same, even though we're getting a new website. We're transferring that domain over. So you should hopefully see that change pretty seamlessly around next month. And please feel free to get a hold of me, get in touch. If you want updates on all of this stuff and you're not on our mailing list, shoot me a message here or send me an email and I will add you. And you'll get updates on all of these events and registrations, jobs, fire news, plain language summaries, all that great stuff. With that, I'll stop my share and pass it on because I know we have a lot of other people with a lot of other things to share.
Thanks, Jen. Jess, are you ready to go?
Yep, just making sure I'm finding the right screen on here.
Okay.
How's that looking?
Looks great.
All right. Thanks very much for having me. I'm going to kick off my camera here because of, well, maybe I can't now that I'm in share screen mode. I apologize for any rural internet issues I might have, but thanks for having us. I appreciate it. We're kind of new on the scene in Virginia, and it's exciting to be listening to all these awesome projects that are happening across the state. And, fire, I'm going to push it over and over again. I've got some meetings in Virginia this week as well. It's our #1 tool for habitat and a lot of the things we love to do. So it's fun to hear everybody. Our mission is to conserve quail, pheasants, and other wildlife through habitat improvements, public access, education, advocacy, and delivery. Some of you might also have heard about us as the Habitat Organization. That's really what I'm going to focus on in my few minutes of fame here. Talk about really our field delivery and what we are doing in Virginia. Our goal is to put fire on the ground, whether that's through habitat teams that we have in some states, which I'll touch on, or through technical assistance and through biologists across the landscape in Virginia. Really, our field delivery is, there are a lot of words on here and I promise I won't read them all, but our big thing is to provide lift to partner agencies and organizations in the states where, we need more technical assistance is needed on the ground, or where we can creatively come up with strategies to put more habitat on the ground, whether that's, timber stand improvement, spraying, fire teams. We are working across the country to create habitat, mostly upland habitat. We do dabble in wetlands. We're really here to fill a need, total ecosystem. And with that, we're working strategically with partners, and I can't stress that enough. it's awesome to see so many different partnerships on here and people talking about working together. And that's really what's going to move the needle for conservation in our states and help us with the fight. We do have a chapter model. So we have volunteers that work in our chapters. And the beautiful thing about it is the money that they raise locally supports efforts locally. We have a lot of chapters that are interested in habitat work. Some just want to raise money and write the check for it. And some actually want to get their boots dirty and stand beside you and string a fire, or, you know, spray some of those invasives that we've been talking about. So I would really encourage you to reach out to our biologists there in Virginia and see how you can plug in and maybe get some help from some of our chapters. So how are we getting more prescribed fire on the ground? We are participating in Learn to Burn workshops in many of the states that we're in, working to strengthen our fire contractors. So just building support and inviting them to the table when we're talking about habitat. We are involved in a lot of cooperative landowner burns in partnership with prescribed burn associations and with our private lands biologists on the ground, helping lead those efforts. Trying to get more involved in prescribed burn associations and work with the team on how we can move things forward. And also the habitat specialist, which I kind of teased earlier. We have teams in Illinois, Arkansas, and a few other states. We're about to throw a team on the ground in Georgia. And those teams are typically consist of 5 people. So the burn boss and 3 to 4 technicians on the ground. And their main goal is fire. But, you know, we can't burn every day. So they're doing other habitat things on those other days. So like I said, timber stand improvement, spraying, planting, natives. First and foremost, they're private lands focused. A lot of our funding comes from NRCS. In our area, a lot of it is coming from Working Lands for Wildlife, Bob White. But we will also work on public lands and strengthening projects. You know, we want to build habitat connectivity. So often that goes hand in hand. Some states are funded through PR funds, and in some states we're funded through license plate sales. It really varies, but we're happy to work it out and put something together. Like I said, the big thing is making sure we're supplied with the appropriate equipment. We've talked a lot about how we get things done and equipment. It's expensive. Through some of our corporate partnerships, we've been able to get things donated. Our chapters are critical in helping us fundraise and get items donated for our crews. But we first and foremost want to make sure, you know, they're safe and they're well equipped. And getting all those resources pulled together can be really taxing and time consuming, but working together is the key on this. And like I said, we've got some really successful projects. And if any of you are interested, Arkansas is kind of our poster child right now. And I'd be happy to talk to anybody more about that or hook you up with our Arkansas state coordinator. And then just to kind of plug in a little bit about what we're doing on the ground with our private lands biologists. They're out offering technical assistance. We get a lot of calls, obviously, for quail and upland management. But one of the big things is, are our recommendations effective? So through Working Lands for Wildlife, Bob White and NRCS, we've received some funding to actually do some monitoring across some of our private land sites and public land sites. So we've got a lot of really exciting stuff going on. And I'm very excited to bring it to Virginia. I'm based in Georgia and living here now, but we used to live in the mountains of Front Royal. I don't know if people know about Linden. Last time I was there, it's exploded and all built up. But I love Virginia, and I'm really happy to see what everybody's doing and really proud to be there. Earlier today, Mark Puckett put a link to this map in the chat, and I wanted everybody to kind of take a look at it and see how the private lands biologists are spread out. These biologists are great resources and a great gateway to get more fire on the ground. They are closely involved with NRCS programming. They mostly sit in NRCS offices, so they can help the landowner navigate funding that Jeff had talked about earlier. So get in touch with them when you need help on projects and involve them. That's what they're there for. I didn't realize I had quite so much time, so I'm not going to belabor this and carry on, but I am around for any questions. Like I said, we're kind of getting new in there and kind of fill in some gaps with technical assistance, and we're happy to help out and do what we can to get some habitat on the ground. And I'll be available for questions after. Is all I have right now.
That's perfect. Thanks, Jess. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Nicole, you ready to go?
Yeah, let me get myself all set up here. I did this the other day, oops, and it went really well. So hopefully it will go really well. It will go well again. And how's that looking?
It looks great.
Okay. Well, hello everyone. Thank you, Jen and Jess. You set me up really well to talk about partners. I'm Nicole Simmons. I work for the Nature Conservancy in the mountains of Virginia, and I'm also one of the co-leads for the Fire Learning Network in the heart of the Appalachians. So just to give you many of you, this will be a reminder, but some of you are probably unfamiliar with the Fire Learning Network. The Fire Learning Network is a national program. It is run by the Nature Conservancy's North America Fire Initiative team, but it is funded by the USDA Forest Service, BLM, Department of Interior, the Nature Conservancy. It's truly a collaborative deal. So just this little map up in the corner here is the National Fire Learning Network landscapes. And I'm representing the Central Appalachians Fire Learning Network. And that Central Appalachians Fire Learning Network encompasses the swath of green there in the Virginia, the heart of the Appalachians, and then runs all the way from Pennsylvania into West Virginia, Maryland, through Virginia down into Kentucky. But like I said, I'm going to focus today mostly on heart of the Appalachians. And I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about what's been going on and what we've been up to over the last few years. So as many of you probably know, the Fire Learning Network started in the Central Apps about 15 years ago. And really the focus has been over time is to burn more acres, build more capacity, learn about that, and then try and share that across many partners. This is a little bit of a timeline. I apologize. I know it's probably really small on your screen, but I think this is just a really excellent piece of to show you of all the work that's happened over the last 15 years, where we started and where we are now. So like I said, and then you'll see some of the publications listed here that Jen talked about, like the history of fire in the Appalachians. The Fire Learning Network really, it started in 2006. It was a group of people who were really trying to figure out how to reintroduce fire into the Appalachians and gain true understanding of how big of a role fire played in the Appalachians throughout history, and trying to recreate some of that. There was a big call to action because we noticed that that oaks were not regenerating. Oak and pines were not regenerating on our drier sites. There's the mesification of our forests. And the call to action came from trying to slow that down and turn the train a little bit. So I will say that the work that we do is really, it's all about partnership, and we wouldn't be able to do much of the work that we do in the apps without partnerships. So there's a picture of our trucks all lined up together. Most of the burns that we do in the central part of the heart of the apps have at least 5 partner agencies on them on any given burn, small or large. So you may recognize a few people here, but yes, so we burn together, we build together, we learn together. This has become our bread and butter and the way we do things. And we're trying to inspire future generations to put that good fire back in the landscape. So what we've been up to in the last, so that we have these places that we really love for lots of time. So what we've been up to in the last year is one, we finished a strategic plan, a collaboratively developed strategic plan. And I'm really excited about this. It's really taking those pillars that I talked about, the burn, build, learn, and share, and making those into actionable items. So we've done really well. We've been increasing our burning over the last 15 years. And now we're at the point where we can say, how do we continue to move that needle? Yesterday, Jean Lorbert presented on some of the monitoring results, and that monitoring program is a direct result of the partnerships that we have in the heart of the Appalachians Fire Learning Network. And the other big thing that we did last year was we had a record-breaking season across the heart of the apps. We burned 35,000 acres, which was really huge for us. And so now we're trying to figure out how do we maintain that? How do we make that not just a record-breaking year, but a norm across our public lands in the Appalachians. Lindsay is going to post a link to the strategic plan on the Prescribed Fire Council website. And then another thing I wanted to speak about today was our representation with the Fire Learning Network and how we can bridge gaps to the Virginia Prescribed Fire Council. Yesterday, there was made mention of a media team that we've convened that Sam Lopez is leading from DWR, and we want to find those cross sections between Prescribed Fire Council and Fire Learning Network to strengthen the collaborations for good fire across the state. So hopefully you'll be hearing from me a little bit more as the council picks back up with steam again. All right, well, that's all I have. I'm happy to answer any questions. Many of the folks on this call today are members of our Heart of the Apps FLN. So if anybody has anything to add, I'd be happy to hear your thoughts.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, Nicole. Kevin Hires is next with Tall Timbers Fire Science Consortium, and we'll have plenty of time for discussion and questions at the end.
All right, Jason, let me get this thing pulled up and start the video if you want to see. Are you able to see the screen and slideshow?
You got it.
Well, thanks for inviting me. I'm John Kevin Hires, for those y'all that don't know me, but friend of Virginia in a variety of ways. Known a number of y'all for many, many years, and I'm currently detailed to USGS in Reston, Virginia. So I've been spending the last 12 months up here, and will continue through the end of the year. And so in that role, I'm helping Paul Stebline coordinate fire science needs throughout the Department of Interior. and really excited to tell y'all briefly about an effort that we started at Tall Timbers, but we're sort of housing out of the Athens Fire Lab with U.S. Forest Service now, called the Prescribed Fire Science Consortium. The consortium is really about connecting researchers and managers in fundamental ways. And we'll briefly go through what we've been able to accomplish and where we're going. So as we know, as former FMO at one of the nation's largest prescribed fire programs at Eglin Air Force Base, I've been able to walk the walk and realize how science often doesn't meet the needs of prescribed fire managers. I mean, we're burning in landscapes that are just simply increasingly complicated. And we've learned by trial and error over the past, and now we're burning in a context, social context that's not very tolerant of the error part of that equation. And so, my sense is that we needed a concerted effort to develop 21st century tools and research and science support for fire managers of the 21st century landscape. And so we brought together a ragtag band of researchers and managers and self-declared ourselves the Prescribed Fire Science Consortium. And the group itself included people from around the country. And when we started this effort in 2016, there wasn't a lot of focus on research needs for prescribed fire managers. Of course, everybody has tried to connect with local ecologists, fire behavior analysts, tried to do this in a variety of contexts. And we've just heard a few talks about how we've been institutionalizing that tech transfer. But for knowledge generation and tool development, we did not have a concerted effort focused on the needs of prescribed fire managers. And pardon me while I quote myself, until now, there had been no recognized organized leadership for advancing prescribed fire science. And we published a paper, a number of us together with managers, on what we thought that research agenda should be as we pushed forward. And of course, this was published in March of 2020. We had the 2020 fire seasons out west. In 2021, we've seen a sea change in attitude towards treatment in the Western United States. And so we went from a group of researchers and managers that were scrounging around for funding and money to develop tools and technology to a much larger community that started to recognize this need and the science support that must go with it. So briefly, just some of the things that the consortium focused in on. One is bringing managers and researchers together to define needs and requirements. Because the problem has grown in complexity and the number of disciplines that intersect fire have really grown, often the act of burning is a barrier to researchers, new researchers, either young in their careers or those that come from non-traditional disciplines, that like fluid dynamics, the physics of fire spread, that may not have access to NOMEX and burn on the ground. And so we thought that bringing people together on burn events was going to be a critical part of growing a relationship, and that's certainly borne out in some of the other outreach efforts like the FLN and CAFMSA and other efforts throughout the United States. But burning together allows for people to have some informal time to discuss what they see, their perspectives. And we committed to having an annual research burn event, and we're doing about 2 a year right up until 2020, and we started to have a virtual burn event. We talk a little bit about how we changed our approach, and we're back to burning together. This past fall, we were all in New Jersey setting a small fire with Nick Skoronsky. We wanted to really focus in on prescribed fire behavior modeling. The tools that were handed were developed out of the wildfire world. They don't operate at the scales, they don't connect the processes, and frankly, they have a tough time defining safe prescription windows. We wanted to link transport of smoke to fire behavior modeling and ignition patterns and decisions that we actually had control over. And we wanted to be able to capture some of the marginal fire conditions. Of course, the modeling tool suite that were handed was developed for extreme conditions, and yet most of our prescribed fires are set under conditions that are not extreme. And then lastly, we wanted to be able to integrate mechanistically how fire does work ecologically. So how can we improve the prediction of ecological outcomes by tying them back to how energy transfer from fire drives those outcomes? And this is a big collaboration. We've got I've got a few agency logos down below, but there are literally dozens of organizations, both academic and government and private entities that have contributed to this effort over the last 6 years now. Very briefly, I'll give you some sense of what we've been trying to develop. This is a supercomputer model developed out of Los Alamos called FireTech that allows us to couple the fire behavior to the the fire and ignition patterns on the ground to the atmosphere at 1 meter resolution, and be able to watch the wind vectors that are developed from a relatively complex but commonly used ignition pattern, like multiple lines of strip head fire. Gives a sense of how complex smoke management and ember generation might be, and to be able to show managers where potential holding concerns might be. These blue winds or downdrafts that are coming through convective core that sort of migrated across the unit as those fires converge together. But these tools are capable of capturing fire behavior in a way that allows us to really enhance the training environment for new managers. One of the exciting parts about this new tool suite is that they can also integrate our ignition patterns, our fire behavior, the ecosystems that we're burning, and then the smoke production. So they capture chemistry while they're burning these coupled fire atmospheric, or capturing these coupled fire atmospheric processes. And the chemistry of particulate matter production can then be mapped into the smoke plume as it's generated. Here we're just illustrating a couple of different ignition patterns in the lofting of smoke in the near field. One of the really exciting parts to me is that, let's go backwards, is the ability now to use some of the more rapid tools on laptops to plan and execute and evaluate prescribed fires. This is an output from an example at Piedmont National Wildlife Refuge and the Hitchty Experimental Forest, which is wedged in between them, on a drone ignition, where we actually looked at potential consequences of this drain feature down, you can see on the topo map in the upper right. We changed the fuel moisture of the drainage and looked at escape potential of this particular prescribed fire that was burning up against it. And then, of course, we want to be able to apply these tools to lessons learned. In this case, this is a column collapse that was developed as part of the Dude Fire reconstruction, but could just as easily represent a thunderstorm outflow boundary. And we're in the process of trying to use some of these next generation modeling tools to create training materials that allow fire managers to both explore what if scenarios on the extremes that they might experience, but then also to reconstruct post-fire or events that may not have gone right, or may have may not have been exactly what they wanted. Lastly, because these fire models are capable of running at really fine scales, we started to work together across organizations within the consortium to push them towards next. This is a burn. This is actually just a screen capture of a 3D we've created with an Oculus Rift headset, where you can walk inside that 5 fire ignition pattern, the ATV ignition, at Eglin Air Force Base simulated burn. And we're hoping to rapidly take all of these tools, package them together with training, with advanced training environments, and give burn bosses their first flight simulator for planning and executing fires. And again, thinking about moving beyond just trial and error as a learning environment. We don't give the keys to the Boeing 737 before somebody, some pilot has spent a lot of time in the simulator, and these tools give you that opportunity for the first time. And so again, this consortium is coming together and trying to take the technology and the science and pipe it into the hands of managers in a way that they've already been demanding from the get-go up front. And this is a partnership not just with Los Alamos Forest Service, Tall Timbers, now USGS, as well as the Prescribed Fire Training Center in NAFRI. One of the things that I do want to emphasize, and as this effort continues to grow, we've had a lot of outreach from international audiences, including Australia, the Center for Prescribed Fire Excellence. But the idea of really inviting researchers in non-traditional disciplines into the fire community is important. These things, the fire environment is more and more complicated. We need the social scientists, we need the physicists, we need the atmospheric scientists, we need remote sensors. And again, often these disciplines don't come with the experience to jump on a fire line, to grab a drip torch, or hold second seat on an engine. And so being able to bring those researchers into a community safely and effectively, and allow that safe environment to share and explore ideas, is something that we really want to continue to anchor the relationship of managers and researchers as we push forward with the prescribed fire science agenda. And with that, I'll go ahead and end, and I'll stick around for any questions that you may have at the end.
Thanks, Kevin. Those simulations were awesome. Yeah, definitely we'll have some questions at the end for you for sure. Next up, Sean Swartz and Dakota Wagner from the Forest Steward Guild.
All right, thanks, Jason. I'm going to share my screen. And Kevin, that was a wonderful presentation. Those models were really cool to watch. So hopefully my presentation is just as fun, maybe. Can you see my first slide?
It looks good, and the picture is awesome. So the presentation is going to be
great. All right. So yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is Dakota Wagner. I'm the Southeast Region Coordinator with the Forest Stewards Guild. And today I'm going to talk to y'all about who the Guild is and what it is we do nationally, but then also some of our projects happening here in the Southeast as they relate to fire. So the Guild is a 25-year-old national nonprofit. We have locations spread out throughout the country. Our headquarters are actually in Santa Fe, New Mexico. We have offices in the Pacific Northwest, Lake States, the Northeast, and then our Southeast region office is located in Asheville, North Carolina, which is where I'm zooming in from today. And so at the Guild, our mission is to practice and promote responsible forestry as a means of sustaining the integrity of forest ecosystems and the human communities dependent upon them. Basically, this is saying that we want to make that triple bottom line the professional standard. So focusing on economically, ecologically, and socially responsible forestry. And we do this through a number of different avenues. Boots on the ground action is one of them. Training, education, policy analysis, research, and then to some degree, advocacy. Along with our project work and program work, we also have a membership-based program. And our members include our professional members, which are your foresters or natural resource practitioners, affiliate members, who are folks that tend to be interested in conservation and forestry, which are often landowners, and like I think I have some teachers and my parents are affiliate members. And then we also have our student membership. And if you work with students, or if you know students, or if you are a student, our student membership is actually free. And when you become a member, you commit to following a series of guiding principles in your approach to land management. And one of those principles is what we call our first duty principle, which states that your first duty as a forester, a landowner, or a land manager is to the forest and its future. And I wanted to kind of give some context about our membership, just so you get an idea of who we are and where we're at. Nationally, our Guild members are mostly professional, 49%, followed by our student members, affiliate members, retired professional members, and then our gift membership. And we are pretty spread out throughout the country. The map on the left, you can see the darker green is where we have a higher concentration of active members. So we have a lot in the Northeast and out West, and then a good amount spread out in the Southeast. And specifically looking at our Southeast region, our membership is pretty split, 43% professional and student, followed by some retired professional, affiliate members, and then a gift membership. And our Southeast region does span those 14 states in green, including Louisiana. We just currently don't have any active members in Louisiana. So if you know anybody there, send them my way. Most of our members are in North Carolina, Tennessee, and then followed by Virginia. So now that I talked about our membership and kind of nationally, I wanted to delve a little bit deeper into our Southeast region program when it comes to our project work. And our Southeast region program is relatively new. We've had folks on staff here for probably about 5 years. I've been in my current role for about 3 years now. And we do have projects happening across the entire Southeast region. And one of the ways that we can do that is through our incredible partnerships and folks that we are able to connect with on the ground. And that includes members and non-members. And today I just wanted to talk about 2 or 3, if there's enough time, of our main programs that we do and the cool things that are happening within those programs. So the first one I wanted to talk about is our shortleaf pine restoration project on the Cumberland Plateau of Tennessee and Kentucky. And our primary goal within this project was to promote ecosystems that are viable for shortleaf pine restoration. And one way we do that is through increasing the capacity of prescribed fire. The shortleaf pine is one of those species that really depends upon fire to create an ecosystem where it can live and thrive. We do those things through partnerships with agencies and organizations by getting some on-the-ground work done. We work a lot with the state of Tennessee and Kentucky, and they're amazing partners, and we've gotten a lot of great work done because of them. And something else we really focus on is education and outreach, primarily to private forest landowners, but then also practitioners who may be interested or want to know more about ecological forestry approaches specific to shortleaf pine restoration. So we've been able to put management plans focused on shortleaf pine into the hands of landowners, as well as connect them to NRCS cost share programs to actually implement some of those practices, as well as hosting some learn and burns, working with universities to put in some interpretive signage on talks about their management and captures their audiences, and really a lot of very cool things. And actually the spring coming up, we are going to have a couple events this year. We've been kind of on hold because of COVID, like everything else, but this spring we have a learn and burn that we're doing in partnership with the state of Tennessee and their burn manager program. And then later into the season, perhaps this summer, we're going to have a couple field tours and workshops. So stay tuned on information about that and how you might be able to join us, because it might be close to you. And something else that we're broadly involved in is the Fire Adapted Communities Network within the Southeast. And our niche that we fill within this network and within the Fire Adapted Communities community is, again, that private forest landowner outreach and education. So the Southeast, as most of y'all probably know, is a super high percentage owned by private forest landowners as acreage goes. So we work to connect with these landowners and share information about benefits of prescribed fire on their property, as well as tools that they can use to burn themselves or contract out the state or other folks that can help them burn. Last year, we were able to put together a virtual learn and burn, and it's available on YouTube, and it's about a 15-minute video that highlights some work happening in Western North Carolina and is relevant to North Carolina landowners. And then the third project that I just wanted to talk about, it doesn't really relate to fire much at all, but it's a really cool program because it does span, as you can see on the map, from the lower Mississippi alluvial valley all the way into the coast, the Atlantic coast. And that's our bottomland hardwood forestry program. And what we're doing with this program is promoting what is been coined wildlife forestry practices, which is essentially the same thing as ecological forestry. Just implementing and spreading the word about these forestry practices that look at the landscape as a whole and to benefit wildlife and hydrology and a bunch of other different things. And we work with private forest landowners, again, for education and outreach, as well as other local partners on the ground to implement some of this work, putting together demonstration sites. And we were able to put together a management plan template, actually, for the Atlantic coastal plain, with some of the practices that have been practiced for a while out in the lower Mississippi alluvial valley, but are sort of newer here on the coastal plain, just because bottomland hardwood forests look different here than they do out there. Let's see, I think that's all I had. Yep, that's all I had for today. Contact info. Sean, he had another meeting he had to hop on to, but that's his contact info. He's our region manager. My info right there is region coordinator. So please feel free to reach out if you have any questions or want any more information or with anything.
Great, thanks, Dakota. Our last speaker of the day is Rebecca Wilson with the Longleaf Pine Cooperators Group.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rebecca Wilson. I work for the Commonwealth of Virginia, the Department of Conservation and Recreation. I will refer to that as DCR because there's not enough acronyms for everybody to remember. But within DCR, I work for the Natural Heritage Program. I'm going to start, I'm speaking on behalf of Brian Van Eerden. He works for the Nature Conservancy. He's the director of the Virginia Pinelands Program. And he is kind of the head honcho for the group that I'm representing today, the Virginia Longleaf Cooperators Group. So he had a conflict, and so I'm speaking in his behalf. So some of the details might be slightly fuzzy, but this is just kind of a broad stroke, writ large view of what our group is all about. I'm going to start with a really small story. Once upon a time, in the part of the world that is now Southeast Virginia, there were over 1 million acres of longleaf pine ecosystem. So this is a system that was prior to European settlement, 90 million acres range wide, going from Virginia all the way south to the Lake Wales Ridge in Florida and all the way west to East Texas. So once upon a time, there was 1 million acres, and then European settlers came and they landed on our shores and they walked into this amazing fire maintained system, and they saw these spectacular trees that were tall and big and beautiful and very well adapted to a frequent fire maintained. Mom and Dad. Don't mind that. Frequent fire maintained system. So European settle came on board, looked around, thought these trees were amazing, cut them all down because they were amazing timber. They made boats and things out of them. Then they sucked all the juice out of them to make their boats float on the water through naval stores processing. And then they brought a whole bunch of unsustainable practices with them, like fire suppression, unsustainable agricultural practices that introduced things like hogs, feral pigs that they let run wild. Basically, they cut them all down, and then they made it nigh on impossible for the system to regenerate itself. So fast forward in the story to the year 2000. In the state of Virginia, we have about 200 trees. So from 1 million acres to a number of trees that you can count. Most of these trees were just the vagaries of fate. They were boundary trees. They were in areas that were hard to harvest. They were owned by the paper mill section of International Paper instead of the timber or the fiber production part. So really just left with a ragtag remnant of what we originally had in Virginia. So Department of Forestry, and then folks from my agency and from the Nature Conservancy and a bunch of others decided it was time to put Virginia back on the map with longleaf pine. And I mean that quite literally. some of the funding sources that we wanted to, because, the minute you try to do anything about anything in the world, it takes money. So looking around for funding sources, some of the funding sources were using an outdated 1971 map of the range of longleaf pine that didn't include much of Virginia. And so we were kind of excluded from going after some of the monies that were available for longleaf pine restoration, because we literally weren't on the map. So some folks banded together and started working on how we crack this, how we make the pine cone open and the seeds fall out. Okay, that wasn't very good. Keep with me. So let's see. In the year 2007, the Forest Service and the Department of Defense and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and a regional working group of diverse organizations was formed in 2007. They developed America's Longleaf Restoration Initiative, ALRI, for those of you who don't have enough shortcut names in your life. So the ALRI was formed across 9 southern states, and it's a coalition, a big partnership of folks in federal and state agencies, non-government organizations, universities, private industry, private landowners, a bunch of diverse partners coming together. So Virginia saw the value in being part of this group. So the Longleaf Restoration Initiative has these local implementation teams that are basically kind of voluntary. Some are voluntary organizations, some are led by different people. They all look a little different across the range, but they're local implementation teams that are across the range. There's a graphic. Lindsay was kind enough to put up my one slide. There's a graphic there that shows the historic range of longleaf pine, and then there's stars where there are local implementation teams. And you'll see that Virginia is the northernmost. So we banded together, decided to call ourselves the Longleaf Cooperators of Virginia. All of the local implementation teams have a little bit different name. But it's this, we're sort of all under this umbrella of the Longleaf Restoration Initiative. So that's who we are. If you look to the big pine cone, that's our logo for the Longleaf Cooperators group. Like I said, Brian Van Eerden's kind of the head honcho of this group, but in Virginia, it houses the Nature Conservancy, DWR. Oh my goodness, I'm really sorry, Matt and people in DWR. There's an old logo. I promise I fixed that in one version of this slide. But Forest Service, Fish and Wildlife Service, Meadowview Biological Research Station, NRCS, FSA, DOF, DCR, and Old Dominion University with their Blackwater Preserve program. So all of us sort of bound together. We are just getting started. It's sort of not really, we've been around for a while, but everyone's doing it kind of as a side hustle. So we haven't had a whole lot of projects, but we have successfully gone after some money from places like NIFWF, the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. We got a whole bunch of money. DOF funneled that for us. Some more money coming through that to do a lot of good work on the ground, a lot of converting ag places and loblolly pine industrial plantations to longleaf pine restoration. Funded a lot of good work there, has funded seedling production within DOF. We collect seeds from cones on DCR properties. So we're all sort of working together to work towards the goal of the Longleaf Restoration Initiative, which is, get this one, the 15-year goal for the range-wide conservation plan as initiated by the Longleaf Restoration Initiative is to increase longleaf range-wide from the current 3.4 million acres to 8 million acres. So it's a big goal. I don't think we're quite keeping pace, but we're building momentum and we're doing better and better. And I sort of see the Longleaf Cooperators group as having a similar role functionally as Nicole's fire learning network efforts in the western part of the state. So I'm planning on kind of sitting on Nicole's shoulder for the next little bit, sort of seeing functionally what steps they're going through and what processes and products they're coming out with. And I think Southeast Virginia can sort of work that way. And I definitely see the Prescribed Fire Council as being an umbrella for both of those groups. So I'm really excited to see the Fire Council kind of reinventing itself yet again and coming up for air. Let's see. So the longleaf pine, I put up a life stage thing there. It's just really interesting. If you guys are interested in longleaf pine, you should check out some of the stuff that's out there from the Longleaf Alliance. They have a lot of really good educational materials. One of the super groovy things about longleaf is that it has this really quirky fire adapted life cycle where it goes from a seed to a stage of life called a grass stage. That is very easy to recover from after fire. And then it grows into these other sort of interesting Lorax looking shapes before it turns into a big mature tree with gorgeous timber. So fire and longleaf go hand in hand. You really can't have longleaf without having the disturbance regime that comes with fire. So very hand in hand, very much part of prescribed fire is the longleaf process. One of the things that has come out of the NIFWIF grant, if you look to the lower middle of the screen, there is a publication that came out in 2014 from Department of Forestry, and then had other folks helping out with writing that, like my boss, Rick Myers, Brian Van Eerden, and it was largely by some of the heroes. Those are some of the heroes in longleaf pine. Billy Apperson has started longleaf pine stuff a really long time ago with Department of Forestry. Jerry Crichton and Dean Kumbia have really kept up the charge along with Brian and Rick and a bunch of other folks. And they came out with this status report in 2014, the effort to restore Virginia's native longleaf pine. It's a really great publication. We're really hoping we can at some point find some money to update that because we've made a lot of strides since then. But it's just a really unique system, a really unique tree, a really fabulous partnership. And we're really hoping that, we continue to grow and develop. Jim Schraring with the Department of Forestry is the longleaf coordinator for Department of Forestry. I'm the longleaf pine restoration specialist for my agency. And like I said, Brian Van Eerden is kind of the head honcho. So look for more from us in the future. Really have had good things happen and potential to have a lot more, and really looking forward to being part of the Prescribed Fire Council and working with other partners in Virginia. How's that? Did I go over my time?
No, you did great. Thanks so much. We've got plenty of time for questions, and we're going to invite the panel members back. So if anybody has anything you'd like to ask any members of the panel, the time is yours. You can use the chat or you can raise your hand, whichever you'd like to do. I can start things off. I have a question for Jen. Are you still on, Jen?
Yeah, I'm here.
Talk a little bit about your successes with engaging the public with social media. I know, all of us are trying to do more outreach efforts. The algorithms are a nightmare. It's hard to really get a decent reach anymore, but I think it would help some of us to know maybe some of your success stories with beyond just the hashtag of good fire, but when you're trying to just let people know, we're doing a prescribed burn today and we're, putting good fire on the ground, is a video better, is a picture better, just some of those tips.
Well, picture or video is pretty much a requirement for your for your post to show up in people's feed at this point. Picture's worth 1,000 words, a video is worth 1,000,000 words. If you have a video and there's any sort of narration, make sure you have captions on it. I think it's something like 80% of videos are viewed with the sound off. All of those things can be helpful in getting your social media posts up. Other things you can do is use hashtags, use your partners, tag them in your posts. So if I know there's a burn going on in Virginia or something going on in Virginia, I will tag all the Virginia agencies and let them use that. And I'm a big proponent of, we talk a lot about raising capacity on the ground, and we can raise capacity in communications too, which I'm really excited to see these, sort of communications working groups coming up all over the region, because that's really what we have to do to be able to share photos, share posts, share events. Even simple things like going and liking your partner's posts help raise their visibility, and then that helps raise your visibility because you're tied together. I'm trying to think of what else you said. It was one question, but that was actually like 1,000 questions, Jason.
Sorry.
Explain social media strategy in 20 seconds or less.
Right. Yeah.
I know I talk fast, but I don't know if I can capture all of it. But one thing I'll say, so we can get a few more questions in, is that if you do need sort of comm support, feel free to reach out to me or the folks at the Southern Fire Exchange. That's what we do. And we do a lot of like spokesperson training. I know, Jason, you've been through my media ready Trex training. If there's something we can do to support you, something we can do to help you set up key messages or get in contact with media, it's not explicitly in our mission, but it's something we do to support getting that fire on the ground.
Thanks, Jen.
Yeah.
You guys did such a good job. You nailed it.
Hard to stand between a fire council and lunch.
That's true. Well, Lindsay, should we move on to just general discussion, thoughts for the future presentation ideas, general questions, stuff like that?
Yeah, let's do it. So we were thinking, once again, thank you to all of our speakers today. It was so awesome to hear from all of you. And now I just want to know about all the different groups. We need to have more of those. It's cool to see some people doing things that not all of us were aware of. So if you do have any questions you think of, feel free to throw them into the chat and folks can answer those. But we were thinking, since we had finished a little bit early today, we would love to open the floor up. I will turn off the mute, please, and give you guys a chance to, like, what other kind of presentations would you like the council to bring into the future? What sorts of issues are there left to work on, trainings, any of that thing? Share your thoughts, any other questions you might have in general, that kind of thing. So like I said, I'm gonna let people unmute themselves. And if you do want to speak, if you don't want to use the chat, just raise your hand first so we don't accidentally all talk over each other. Okay, you should be free to unmute yourselves. One of my first thoughts for you guys is, would you like to see, maybe not like a 2-day meeting all the time, but perhaps webinar type options from the council, like once every month or every couple months, something like that? looks like Mark put something in the chat. Not sure who this is best to go to, but regarding Learn and Burns funding, helping and organizing, etc., and not quite sure where to start. That is a great one. Definitely something that we almost had going right before the pandemic hit. So anybody have thoughts about that for Learn and Burns?
Sure. Yeah, Mark. The Guild, we have a formula that we kind of follow and a checklist that really helps figure out your timeline and things you need to think about. That includes like the whole to-do list of everything you need to look at, like liability, tools, topics, speakers, etc. And I'm happy to share that with you. And it looks like Laurel Case also has a lot of great information on that. Yeah, and that link is great. But feel free to also reach out to me and I can help you if you'd like.
Thanks, Dakota. Shep, what do you have?
Yeah, Mark, I think the other important thing for us to do is just to decide where we want to do one and start planning. I mean, we've executed them before and I think done a pretty good job. We just need to decide we want another and pick a location, and we can loop extension in again to help us with the logistics.
Am
Shep,
I
did
on,
you
Lindsay?
have- Oh, yeah, there you go. Hello.
Yeah, one of the things I was exposed to, and I haven't heard of anything kind of like this happening, is something that Sarasota County in Florida calls Fire Fest. So they conduct an annual open house, if you will, of their prescribed burning program for people who live in the county and surrounding areas. And they actually, conduct a 1 acre prescribed burn on a grass field or very low vegetation. So it's easy to have, almost regardless of what the weather might be like, that's, got a giant buffer and all that. So they have people view that. They have sort of hay rides through the forest in areas where prescribed burns have been conducted over time and different intervals, and lots of kids centered activities. So you might think your organization is trying to get in contact with more individuals and spread your message, something like Fire Fest, and I could put you in contact with the folks in Sarasota County who are in charge of that.
Excellent idea. Thanks. Rebecca.
So I just, I've talked with Adam and Lindsay and a couple of others about this idea, but the Learn and Burn that we did a couple of years ago, I thought was really good. And we got a lot of really interested landowners. I did think that it was a really good visualization of how we do fire, people that have things like UTVs and fire engines and lots of people and specialized equipment. I'd like to see a Learn and Burn that's more focused on private lands and the types of burning that landowners can do, sort of more small scale, and what they can do to safely put fire on the ground in terms of what they can do with line prep and a few other things. And to that end, secret agenda coming up, my folks have a 10-acre field in the northern neck of Virginia that they helped establish through NRCS things. And I'd love to see kind of a more landowner Learn and Burn that focuses kind of more on, not so much on what we do as agencies, but sort of what private landowners can do. And I'm offering up my folks' place, but I'd love to see that. If it's not at my folks' place, I understand, but something that's really a little more nitty gritty for what landowners would be doing.
Yeah, I think, and I'm going to channel Mark Puckett here because this is something that he's brought up, is that we might inadvertently discourage private landowner burning if we really promulgate the idea that you can only do these low complexity burns if you've got 3 engines and 40 people in Nomex.
Yeah, I don't know if y'all can hear me or not, but I've been the person who's been pointing and saying there's a problem, but I haven't been the one willing to lead the solution. So, but what we're talking about now is a big deal, and I think we need to do several learn and burns like this. And I'm willing to help. It looks like Rebecca and Steve and others, I'm sure, are as well. But I had a landowner that sent me an email this week of a picture of several small burns that he had done with his burn crew, which was his daughter. And, they burned using things they had available to them on their property. So there's a lot of potential there. It's just a matter of building a landowner's confidence to do some of those things.
All right. Any other thoughts about learn and burns at the moment? Obviously, this is something that was going to require a lot more organization and planning in the future. So what other ideas or questions or issues do you all want the council to focus on?
Hey, this is Jess McGuire. I'm jumping back in for a second.
Oh, please. Yes.
USDA, Natural Resources Conservation Service, NRCS, we're going to add to the alphabet soup we all talk in. They're really committed to habitat on the ground and fire on the ground and helping landowners achieve their goals, especially on working land. So I think that is an untapped resource. And, through Working Lands for Wildlife, which I really didn't talk about much, but that's the program that I work on, Working Lands for Wildlife, Bob White. We do workshops like this through that program, through funding we've received. So there is stuff out there and, kind of some low-hanging fruit. Also, NIFWIF, working with them with some funding. I think I'm just really excited about partnership potential here because I think we all could create some really great proposals to do some of the things we've been talking about, using some of the tools that are already out there and developed for Virginia. So if you want to brainstorm it, I'm available.
Wonderful. Sounds like there's a whole host of things that we can start leaning in towards and researching. So that is definitely great. Thank you. All right. Anybody else? Thoughts, questions, what you liked, what you didn't like, what we're missing? Oh, it looks like Rebecca, you have a question from Kyle. Outside of immediate Southeast Virginia, how far towards Richmond County, southwest of Richmond, would Longleaf be able to sustain itself in terms of the soil and other environmental conditions that it requires?
I'm sorry, was that question for me?
Yes, it was.
Oh, thank goodness someone is sitting beside me and poking me in the side saying that for you.
I might have said Rebecca really fast. Rebecca, please answer.
Okay, outside of immediate Southeast, how far would Longleaf be able to sustain itself? Okay, so one of the interesting things about Longleaf pine is it's a survivor. It really, if you give it a little disturbance and you give it a heads up in terms of vegetative competition, it's very fluid. It'll grow in a lot of places. The historic range is really the thing that is more discrete. That's a more limited area. So a lot of our restoration has gone towards staying within that historic corridor, but it will grow other places. I've had people grow them. Jim, help me out. I mean, there's one at the Buckingham County. I've had people grow them in Charlottesville. There's some in the Eastern Shore. They'll grow other places. What really drove the historic range was the fire compartments. How far could fire weasel its way around on the landscape and maintain these frequent low intensity burn units? So our burn patterns. So they'll grow other places. Whether they're worthy of restoration, true restoration in terms of they used to be here and now we want them here, that's more limited, but they'll grow a lot of places. And I'll put out there, if you remember the range map, Virginia is at the tippy top of the range for the whole system. So one of the things that DOF has done a lot of work on, we've done a lot of work thinking about and trying to maintain, is the genetic integrity of this northern genome of this wide-ranging tree. So we think, you know, in the presence of global climate changes and, you know, in general, a trend towards warming, that these genotypes, the northern genotypes, have a role to play as southern species move north. So we're kind of particular about the native Virginia trees that we grow. We collect cones from a site in Southeast Virginia that we own. We grow them in Southeast Virginia. You know, we have a very defined northern genotype that we take care of, but you can get trees from other places and they will probably grow in Virginia, whether we probably wouldn't recognize that as part of our restoration effort from a historic sense, if that makes sense. But I mean, you could plant them in a lot of different places. Does that make sense? Did I answer the question?
Made sense to me. Thank you for that. And Steve Croy also had another thought, a larger research need, certainly in the Southeast, and that is effects on bees, especially some of our rare and endangered bees like the rusty patch, and how fire affects them. So that if you know anybody that's working on a research project, definitely one to keep up, or if we find anything that we can get funding for, that kind of thing. Oh, go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, Lindsay. Hey, guys. Yeah, that just came to mind. Sort of the intersection of a number of different things that we all worked our way through. Indiana bats and northern long-eared bats and some of the bat biology and fire effects, but with rusty patch being recently listed and also yellow banded likely to be listed in the near future, you know, just the biology of those species is really unknown. And it also has a really potential for a big effect. One thing could sort of be the intersection. Adam, your work on, you know, anybody's work on duff reduction, because most of these bees overwinter underground. So, and the Fish and Wildlife Service, the biologists that folks have to work with for the various endangered species permits have really no good idea or experience with fire effects. That's just sort of a blank slate for them. So they really need some help on understanding that not all fire is catastrophic and not every fire burns the duff down to mineral soil. So it's the intersection of a number of items. So rusty patch and especially here in the Central Apps, it's becoming a really key area in the range of that species, which really is from the upper Midwest, Great Lakes area, east, and then down to Virginia. So it's just something probably need to get on the radar and get some work headed in that direction. It could be the intersection of even public outreach. A lot of people ask, you know, what's the fire going to do to box turtles? But quickly following that is after turkeys is butterflies and bees and that sort of thing. So really could be an area that could help a lot of people.
Yeah, Lindsay, I've talked with you and Adam about this, but I think a nice next step would be to hear from other prescribed fire councils in other states and sort of see what some of their outcomes are and some of their, just some more things about other prescribed fire councils. I know there are people on this call that have worked in other states that have a lot of experience with what fire councils do. And I'd love to just kind of hear from them, maybe some sort of virtual meeting or workshop or something where we hear from people like Jen Fawcett and people that are active in prescribed fire councils. I think that would be a great next step. Just want to see how other people feel about that.
Sounds good. Laurel is the VP of the North Carolina chapter. So I think we already have our first. Okay, we'll work with you guys first. No, that's a good idea for sure. And we've certainly had our ups and downs, and it would be nice to see how the other fire councils are interacting and getting success. And Jess is in Georgia. So we do have other people on with us today. Cool. Thank you for those thoughts. All right. Anybody else? I don't want to. Oh, Nicole, go ahead.
Yes. So I was thinking, gosh, I just got really distracted and then totally forgot what I was thinking. I was thinking that the work that Zach Prusik talked about yesterday with working on some of those barriers that we have of skill building and qualifications going in outside of the NWCG direction could be a really nice intersection for the Prescribed Fire Council to work with him and some of that work, because we know that those are some barriers that we have here in Virginia.
Yes, certainly. That's a great idea. Thank you. Rebecca, is your hand? Was that just still up from last time?
Yes, but I do have something else. I was just trying to write you a direct message in chat.
Well, share it with the group.
I just wanted to say, speaking of training and fire and all that stuff, I just want to give a shout out to Nicole and some other people that have been instrumental in getting a WTREX, so a Women in Fire Training Exchange that's happening here in the southeast part of the state, based out of kind of the 4-H Center in Wakefield. So there's going to be 20 women from all over the country and all over from parts of the international participants as well. It's a 10-day fire workshop training focused on sort of underserved and minority folks in fire. It's been kind of a male-dominated thing since the inception. So this is our focus, but Nicole's been really instrumental in having these WTREX trainings take place over the country. And she was the really big reason why we're having it in Southeast Virginia. So just wanted everybody to be aware that we're having one. And if you want to get inspired and maybe even cry a little bit, you can Google REI Women in Fire. There's a really fabulous video that REI did in collaboration with one of the earlier WTREX. So we're a proud host, and we're hoping to get a lot of good work on the ground and good training, but it's kind of a big deal.
Definitely. Thank you. Well, I will hand the reins back over to Adam and Jason to close us off, but thank you again for attending. I really hope everybody got a lot out of this 2-day meeting. Hopefully at some point we'll be back in person again, but at least we know we can get together fairly frequently and bring in people from all across the country to meet with us. So really appreciate all your time, and handing it up back over to y'all. Thank you.
Yeah, and a big thanks to Lindsay for helping with all of the organization of the Zoom meeting and keeping everybody on task with everything. She's been a champion on this thing. So thanks a lot, Lindsay. You took a lot of the burden on. So appreciate you doing that. Did a great job. I think with that, if anybody doesn't have anything else to add, I think one of our hopes is to follow up pretty soon about another chance to gather and meet together and go over some information that, topically that might be helpful to practitioners and landowners, and even some of the 101 kind of stuff to get landowners interested in prescribed fire, I think is some of the stuff we're thinking about, and a lot of other points we've kind of been discussing. So be looking for information from us again really soon about next steps as we try to, just like we were saying, try to get momentum moving forward to continue to be really a key player in keeping everybody connected with prescribed fire in the state. But with that, thank you all. Have a good day. And if you have any questions on follow-up about getting in touch with more speakers additional resources, please just reach out to us and let us know. But thank you everyone for being a part of it today.